Yeah. Another thing, by the way, about term limits is that you have the committee chairs who have been in the seats for longer than anybody else, but they may have no knowledge of their specific committee. Barney Frank, Chris Dodd. They brought about the Dodd-Frank regulation, which I'm told cost millions of dollars to administer. I just had a lunch with a CFO of a bank, local bank, and he said that it costs his bank over $1 million a year just to administer Dodd-Frank, and their loan portfolio is near perfect. So this is just another indication of how term limits will help, because we'll get rid of the careerism in Washington.
Yeah, and the two you mentioned, how ironic that a year from now they'll both be gone, hopefully on the pasture, but you stole a little of my thunder about term limits, but I think you addressed that very well. It's something that I can remember as a teenager, an uncle of mine had the expression, vote the ins out. And yes. At the time I thought, well, but over my lifespan, I thought, he was prescient with his whole concept there.
Yeah.
Speak to, if you would, again, this goes maybe a little hand in hand with term limits and what they do in Washington. If you would speak to a little bit about the revolving door of the Washington types, the lobbyists, the good old Boyd network. If you could speak to that for a few minutes.
Well, the good old Boyd network is strong and growing. Unfortunately, in this country, as you know, half the people don't even vote. And a good percentage of the people who do vote are not completely informed about the issues. We have to do a better job of educating folks about the issues. And what happens is that incumbency becomes very, very strong. The power of money becomes very, very strong. The power of PACs, the power of lobbyists. And to a large extent, they control some of the action in D.C. because the people who are taking that money and who are beholden to those interests are looking for favors back and to give favors back. And this is what we have. Again, term limits. Term limits. People who are running for office will know they're in for 8 years max under my plan, which is 4 terms of 2 years. I would, by the way, suggest that it would be better to have 2 terms of 4 years so that each person in Congress runs for re-election only once. Yeah. That would also reduce the power of the dollar in the election process. When people say we have term limits because people can vote out congressmen or congresswomen, not really, because the power of incumbency is so great that it's really not effective to be able to say that you could vote these people out in the normal course. It hasn't worked.
Yeah. And I can speak from experience just here in Connecticut how it's overwhelmingly stacked for the incumbents, and it's just incredible. But I want you to understand or appreciate that if your plan were to be successful, and I would certainly vote for it, 2 terms of 4 years each, I think you're going to be putting a lot of people out of business. They're going to be on the unemployment line, but then maybe they'd have to learn what a real job is like.
Yes, that's true. Well, you take the careerism out of politics. From the point of view of being able to gather the votes to get that accomplished, you'd have to tell the folks who are sitting in the seats now that they're exempted and they're grandfathered, otherwise you have no shot.
Right.
They're not going to vote themselves out of office.
Yeah. Okay, something that I've seen in the local papers, I'd say maybe 3-4 times over the last few months, I've read some articles where on the other side of the aisle, on the Democrat side, you've been critical of one of the Democrat candidates, maybe the others as well, but one in particular, for, at least in the articles that I read, for appearing to have some conflicts of interest. Would you like an opportunity to explain what you mean by that?
Oh, sure. Chris Donovan, whom we think is the likely nominee for the Democratic nomination, is conflicted many ways. Many ways. He was sitting on the redistricting committee. Every 10 years, we have to redistribute the population and create new geographic lines for the districts.
Right.
And being the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Connecticut, he basically gets an automatic seat. Now, that might be fine if he were not running for office for the 5th District, but he is running for office. So I made the case very early on that he should recuse himself and actually just get off the committee, because he was in a position of deciding with other people what the lines for the 5th District were going to be. And interestingly, he seemed to be the only one in the state who disagreed with me. Even the Hartford Courant agreed with me, which is rare. Eventually, he did resign from the redistricting committee. So that was a victory of sorts. The other thing is that he takes campaign contributions from lobbyists. Now, the statute says that you can take those contributions when you're out of session. So he was very, very active, taking up to $40,000 of contributions until the first day of session on March 8th. And then he quietly tells these same folks, can't take any contributions until the end of session, so just hold on to it until the end of the session, then we'll take it again. That's absurd. So I have called him out on that as well. I asked him to return the money, of course. Those checks didn't go out yet.
Check's not in the mail yet.
Not in the mail.
Okay. It's funny. We had a guest on a few months ago who's the executive director of New York City's Conflicts of Interest Board, and it's so many times when he talks about governmental types and positions where it's the the hen house is being watched by the wolf. So I'm not sure how they can make their own rules and then they don't abide by them anyway a lot of times.
Well, that's one of my platforms as well. I signed a pledge which said that I'm going to work very, very hard to make sure that Congress does not exempt themselves from the very laws that they pass. It's really pretty absurd when you think about it. And recently, just a week or two, the House and Senate looked at insider trading to finally put a hold on that with members of Congress. But routinely, the House of Representatives and the Senate exempt themselves from the very rules and laws that they create. They're basically saying, we're better than you.
Yeah, it amazes me sometimes when that people are just amazed by what goes on there, and nobody's watching. And sometimes I know a lot of the media does have some legitimate criticism aimed their way, but if it weren't for sometimes the media finding some of this information out, I've seen a lot of reports on the national news for these types of things and was blown away about this, this insider trading thing.
Yes.
We're getting close to the end of our show here. Is there one or two things, or are there one or two things that you'd like to leave with the viewers regarding your candidacy?
Well, here, I want the folks to know that if I go down to Washington and they place that trust in me, that it will be most important to me to be honest, to be principled, and to be ethical. And that I will always vote what I think is right for the people and for the country. This is not going to be a job for me, a career for me. I have 4 wonderful children and a wife and my Animal Rescue Foundation, and I'm doing it for the country, not for me. So I want them to understand that they'll have absolute honesty and ethics for me at all time, and I'll do the right thing.
Okay, terrific. Well, we're going to wrap up our show now. Again, I'd like to thank tonight's guest, Mark Greenberg, candidate for the Republican nomination to become your next U.S. Congressman from Connecticut's 5th District. I'd also like to remind our viewers that our air dates on Charter Channel 21 are Mondays at 4:30 and Thursdays at 7 p.m. We also post segments up on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you, whether it be comments on shows that we've done, ideas or on new shows or topics for future shows that you'd like to see, or guests that you'd like to see. And please contact us at brookfieldpublicadvocate@yahoo.com. Again, thanks for watching and good night. Time flies.